Hey everyone, welcome back to Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. I'm your host, Jim Chapman, and I'm continuing with this third episode and an update on the case involving Nolan Wells. And much has occurred that we're going to get into today since the last episode that aired this past Wednesday. Now, throughout this entire investigation and two podcasts that I brought you so far, I have spent a lot of time debunking all the bullshit that is out there with these bad actors that have been desperately trying to control a narrative that, in my opinion, simply does not exist based off of the limited facts that I have seen. Now, look, if people really want to get justice for Nolan Wells, the only way to get there is through the truth. It's just that simple. Using AI to put out fake pictures, fake toxicology reports, that should piss off every single person who claims that they want the truth to come out in this case and justice to occur for Nolan Wells. No matter what, and I don't even think there's a side here, but no matter what side you say you're on, you shouldn't want fake bullshit coming out. And it is insane how many things I'm going to debunk today. Now, initially, I was going to do an episode of this case later on and let kind of everything play out. But I couldn't shake the fact that had I done that, just ignored all the lies that are out there on social media, all the bullshit out there on the internet right now, the main person that I am providing a disservice to is Nolan Wells and Nolan Wells' family, period. Because every time people run with these things that the bad actors are putting out there, it hinders the real facts. And with the size of my podcast platform and the amount of people who have listened to my content and continue to listen to my content, I'm making it my business to set the record straight every single time I come across statements and stories that just ain't true. So with that, let's get into what has occurred in this case over the past couple of days. So on Thursday, the family of Nolan Wells, they held a press conference. They were flanked by civil rights attorney Ben Crump and others as they provided an update on the Nolan Wells case, as well as some other things that we're going to talk about. And I'm going to reference an article that was put out by USA Today that really covered this in detail. And it said, Nolan Wells' family and their attorney on July 30th pleaded for the public for more information about the death of Nolan Wells and the attacks that they faced. Wells, 18, went missing on a July 4th boat trip from an isolated Mississippi barrier island called Horn Island. His body was found days later, but what happened to him largely remains a mystery. Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter said investigators did not initially suspect foul play, but they are continuing to investigate. Wells' family has launched an independent investigation into his death, citing a lack of confidence in Mississippi law enforcement. As the parallel investigation continues, false claims, AI-generated content, and conspiracy theories have spread alongside real developments in the case. I couldn't agree with that more. Family attorney Ben Crump said July 30th that sick people, quote unquote, have been targeting Wells' mother, a nurse, with negative reviews online. And look, you get no argument from me that that's bullshit and should not happen, but you're going to hear later on about some things that I'm going to cover that are a lot worse than getting a negative review on Google, right? Quote, they are just sick, evil people who would attack this mother and this father, simply saying we want to know what happened to our child, Crump said at a news conference held during the National Urban League Conference in Nashville, Tennessee. Then it goes on to say what's happening in the Nolan Wells investigation. Crump announced the family has obtained a full audio recording of a distress call, and I'm not going to go through all that. I already did in the last episode. This theory has already been debunked because there's a video of the boat getting towed out at the same time. I talked about all this last episode, and Nolan Wells is nowhere on that boat. He knows that, I would imagine, at the time that he said this. Moving on, it says Crump said the team is hoping to get more information to Dr. Roger Mitchell, the independent medical examiner who conducted a second autopsy on Wells. Mitchell was unable to determine the cause or manner of death, in part because he could not inspect some of Wells' body, including the throat and larynx, which were kept for additional investigation. Totally normal, happens in every case because the initial examiner, they need more time to examine those parts of the throat. Crump also spoke alongside family members of two other black teenagers who died this year, Daniel Irving and Tyler Smith. And you can look into those cases. I'm not going to cover much on that because I'm covering the Nolan Wells case right now. Attorney Liz Park said the team has been getting over 100 calls each day, and she is talking about the hotline for tips. It also gets into the subpoenas that were issued to social media conglomerates that we're also going to cover in a minute, so I'm not going to talk about that right now. That was pretty much the gist of that press conference. So from here, I want to discuss something I have not spoke about until now, and that is a sitting judge in Mississippi, in the Ocean Springs, Mississippi area. Her name is Judge Ashley Cole, who, y'all, she's not only a sitting judge, a family law judge, but incidentally, she is the mother-in-law of someone very close to this case, that being Warren Hudson. As I said, she's a family court judge. She deals with custody stuff and divorces. So when you see people out there saying there's a rigged narrative because she's a judge, y'all, she's not a criminal judge. She's a family court judge. You can stop with the rigged narrative there, trying to spin something that just don't exist. Now, way back on July 8th, Ashley released an initial statement on her Facebook page, and I found it to be very well written, respectful, made all the sense in the world, and I want to cover that for you quickly because I have not covered it in the prior two episodes. It reads, "Our family, along with the community, grieves the loss of Nolan Wells. Our thoughts and prayers are with Nolan's family. Our son Warren loved Nolan dearly. Unfortunately, I feel that it is appropriate for our family to dispel some rumors with facts based upon the social media attention that is being diverted away from the Wells family and their loss. Yes, I deactivated my Facebook. Given the very heightened emotional state of social media right now, I fear for the safety of my child and my children. My husband and I have 6 children, and we covet their privacy. We do not believe it's appropriate for our minor children's photographs to be circulated throughout the internet, presenting potential threats to their safety." Couldn't agree with her more. "I graduated high school with Christine Wells Wansley, who is Nolan Wells' mother. They graduated high school together, y'all. They knew each other. We are from the same community," she goes on to say. "I have the utmost respect for her and all of the Wells family. We mourn the loss of Nolan with them. Our prayers have been and will continue to be with them." She goes on to say, "My husband and I were not at Horn Island at any point on the 4th of July because at this point in time, people were coming out, idiots, saying that they were there. No one in our family is trying in any way to impede with the investigation by law enforcement or to otherwise hamper the family and law enforcement's quest for answers. Warren was interviewed by the Jackson County Sheriff's Department, and he has cooperated fully. He saw Nolan last around 3 p.m. on July 4th. They left around 4:30 p.m. when the boat they were on started taking on water, and they had an issue with the bilge pump. Nolan made a decision to stay on the island and return inland later with another group of friends." Look, Nolan was an adult. So many people have come out saying, how could you just leave him there? Why couldn't you make him leave? You can't make an 18-year-old who is the size of Nolan leave an island, whether he was the size of Nolan or not. He's a grown-ass man. He can make up his own mind. He was there trying to hook up with a girl. You can't make him leave the island, and nobody's going to do that. That's not even reasonable. They asked him to come. He decided not to come. She goes on to say, "Yes, I am a judge. I also value transparency. I apologize if anyone was offended that I deleted my social media, which she shouldn't even have to say. What does anybody else care what she does with her social media? There was no nefarious motivations in my deleting of my social media. Social media has a lot of positives, but a whole lot of negatives. If you didn't want her to delete it, you should have just not messaged her threats, and we'll get into that. We live in a world of clickbaiting. Sad but true, she continued. My family is hopeful that this information will help redirect the attention to the Wells family, their grief, and their need for our community support. And I'm going to tell you what, you can't say it any better than that. Now, later, she issued a second statement, and the quotes in that statement included are as follows. She said, "We have decided we will not be speaking to the press at this time. The media is not the appropriate forum to further elaborate on the facts of July 4th, 2026. We have not had the opportunity to speak to the Wells-Wansley family or their attorney. However, we are willing to directly communicate with attorney Ben Crump and the Wells-Wansley family." She's reaching out, asking this family, hey, you want to talk about this? You want to talk about everything we may know? Meet with us. What more could you ask these people to do? She goes on to say, we will provide them with all the information known to us so their family can rest and properly mourn. We also want to know what happened to Nolan. We will do everything within our power to assist Nolan's family in their quest for answers. And I'll tell you what, she puts her money where her mouth is in just a little while, and we'll get to that. So from here, as you can see, this woman's doing everything she can to respect the investigation, respect the family of Nolan Wells. And of course, there are idiots out there in social media. They exist everywhere. They step all over these statements because they're hell bent on dividing us. These people, these divisive animals, if you will, these sick people, you can bet on that. So sick, in fact, that they didn't stop there with Judge Cole. They used AI at this point to manipulate a flyer with the tip line for calling in tips for Nolan's case. Well, they switched the numbers around using AI on this flyer, and they made it match the direct line to Judge Cole's office. Now, I couldn't believe that there were people so dumb that they actually thought that this was real. But you know, they exist. They're out there. But they're either too stupid and bought it hook, line, and sinker, or they're in on it. They're in on the misinformation. And a lot of people are about to start paying for this, incidentally. We'll get into that. But you wouldn't believe the amount of people that were promoting this. I mean, how stupid do you have to be to believe that the tip line for the Nolan Wells case goes to the stepmother of one of the kids that has been thrown into the middle of this thing? Come on, people. Honestly, if you would have told me anyone would have believed that, I would have told you you're crazy. But the internet are full, as I said, of people promoting this sort of conspiracy generated by AI. Y'all are being played for fools by people who have no skin in this game. They just want to stir up bullshit. The actual tip line rings to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. And they also have a tip line, incidentally, to Ben Crump's legal team. And that number is 1-888-991-7772. So call in your tips, please, if you know anything on this case. But ponder this for a second. How would putting a fake tip line out there benefit the family of Nolan Wells or get justice for Nolan Wells when you're promoting a fake tip line essentially to promote hate? It wouldn't. It's disgusting. And anybody who supports that needs to ask themselves a lot of questions on if they really care about the truth in this case. But I think I already know the answer to that. But the icing on the cake with Judge Cole, that came on July 30th as well, when an arrest was made. And I'm going to reference an article by TMZ for this one. And it reads, death threats sent to judge concerning Nolan Wells case. A California man was arrested for allegedly sending death threats to the stepmom of one of Nolan Wells' friends. The woman is sitting judge in Mississippi, and now we have a visual of the hateful messages. New legal documents obtained by TMZ show the DMs Joseph Vasquez DeMarcy allegedly sent Jackson County Judge Ashley Cole, alluding to a package with an explosive device inside. And let me just read you the messages that I have that were sent. And this was through Facebook. It says, there will be a package coming to your guy's office in the next few days. It's going to blow you away when you see it. Laugh out loud. Probably best to have the boys there to see it as well. Then, of course, there's no response to any of these. So this crazy person continues to text. Blood. So much blood everywhere. Hard to clean, especially from a boat. But yours will be quick, I promise. I got all your info. Not even the FBI can stop this. Once that package is opened, the timer will start, and then you have maybe 10 seconds or less to ask God forgiveness. That's real smart. Send that to a sitting judge. See what happens to you. DeMarcy references Cole's family too. Her stepson is Warren Hudson, a friend of Nolan's, who went on a popular podcast to push back on allegations Nolan friends had something to do with his death. And they are talking about the Officer Tatum podcast. Great podcast. I recommend you check it out. It's where I got a lot of the information on this case from, was that interview with Warren Hudson. Then it goes on to read, as we reported, police say DeMarcy sent threats over Facebook, and they tracked him down by tracing email IP addresses associated with his social media account and cross-referencing a date of birth, phone number, and street address that were tied to it. As we told you, and they're talking about TMZ, Nolan's friends and families have been receiving hateful messages ever since his death, with many theorizing the group he hung out with on the 4th of July had something to do with it. Warren has denied any involvement in Nolan's death, and he goes on to talk about something I'm going to mention in a minute, so I'm going to stop there. But let me tell you, you got to have at least, at max, I should say, one brain cell in your head if you threaten a sitting judge, regardless of their affiliation with this case. Really, if you threaten anybody. But a sitting judge, you get 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. So Mr. DeMarcy will be spending 5 years in prison, because I can guarantee you he's going to get the max, because a judge who is going to sentence this guy, he had a colleague's life get threatened. And he's a judge, or she, whoever presides over this case. And they're going to say, you're getting the max, man. You threatened one of my colleagues. So good job. A guy that probably was never going to go through with this, because another thing with threats, people that are really going to do something don't threaten it. They do it. They don't make threats ahead of time. So likely this guy was just trying to scare somebody, but he just got 5 years in prison for that. Dumb. Now I'm going to move on to someone else involved in this case, and his name is Bart Edmondson Jr. Now, if you listen to my last podcast, I played you the actual enhanced footage of the emergency boat call, as well as the unenhanced footage. And the guy at the other end of this call was Bart. He's also a college football player. He was also friends with Nolan. Well, a picture has surfaced of Bart, this young man, and a young lady. And the person who put that picture out there on social media, they lied, and they said that this young lady that Bart was with was Katie. And they were trying to make an inference. The inference they were trying to make was that Katie and Bart were dating, and that Bart got pissed because Nolan was trying to hook up with her that day. Well, guess what? The whole thing is bullshit. The girl in the picture is not Katie. It's a girl that Bart went to high school with. Bart has no idea who Katie is. This is a girl that everybody, when they saw this picture come out, that went to that same high school with Bart, and I don't know the girl's name, and even if I knew it, I wouldn't say it, but we'll say her name is Anna, okay? They looked at that picture and they said, wait a minute, that's not a girl named Katie, that's Anna. We all graduated with her. Wasn't even the same girl. And y'all don't think people are trying to spin a narrative? Trying to put this man as a boyfriend of a girl named Katie that he didn't even know, and then essentially accuse him of killing Nolan Wells over that? Come on. But one thing these people didn't know about Bart is his family don't play. And neither does an attorney by the name of Russell Latino, who is incidentally representing Bart now. And I'm going to read you a Facebook post put out by attorney Russell Latino and a follow-up that were both posted on July 29th on his Facebook page regarding just this. July 29th, 10:01 a.m. There's a picture circulating this morning of Bart Edmondson Jr. from high school with a young woman. Bart is now 21 and in college. In other words, this picture is old. People are asserting that the young woman in the picture is someone named Katie McCormick, that Bart had an intimate relationship with Miss Katie, and that he killed Nolan Wells because Nolan was speaking to her. The person in the circulating photograph was much younger than Bart and is not Katie McCormick. We can say this definitively, not because Bart has a relationship with Miss McCormick, but because Bart knows exactly who the person photographed is. So too would anyone who attended high school with them. Out of respect for her privacy, we're not going to identify her by name. Bart is not now, nor has he ever been in a relationship with Katie McCormick. He did not know who she was before this tragedy occurred. Let me be abundantly clear. Bart Edmondson Jr. did not kill or in any way contribute to the tragic death of Nolan Wells. He had no motive to do so. All he did was help a boat that was in distress. He has fully and freely cooperated with authorities, sharing every bit of information he knows, providing access to his boat, his GPS, his phone, and sharing witness lists with investigators. He has done all of this without criminal counsel, though most criminal attorneys would advise against that, without hesitation and without requiring a warrant. That he has been publicly quiet is a byproduct of respect for the Wells family and the investigative process. It is not a sign of the depth of the investigation or anything but complete and total openness with investigators. He also made another post prior to that, and that said, I have been retained by the family of Bart Edmondson Jr. to pursue people defaming him and wholly fabricating assertions of fact that are putting Bart, his family, and friends in harm's way. The family will put out a formal statement later today and announce the initiation of a defamation lawsuit. Bart received a credible threat yesterday because of some of the made-up speculation on this and other sites. The FBI, state and local law enforcement, all have been activated. But I want to share a few things for people that think it's a game to invent lies that could get other people killed. We've hired a private investigator firm to identify and track individuals engaged in defamation against the Edmondstons. That you are young, naive, or lack the resources to pay civil judgment will not deter us from filing a lawsuit against you. This is not about money for my clients. They want to protect their family, and they want to curb people who lie recklessly. If you make up something out of thin air or share something you don't know to be true, adding the word allegedly or saying people are reporting will not save you from a defamation lawsuit. And he's absolutely correct. If you know it not to be true, just saying allegedly doesn't matter. Now, if you don't know it not to be true, that's a little bit of a line, but the people that are saying this shit know they're full of shit. He goes on to say, we will address the falsehoods presented methodically, but now is not the time for that. Now is the time to make very clear that we intend to be unrelenting against people who are lying online for clicks and likes. The Edmondstons and the broader Ocean Springs community grieve the loss of Nolan Wells. They want peace and truth for Nolan's family. People making up things online that put others at risk are not honoring Nolan's life or loss. Couldn't agree with that more. They are not bringing us closer to the truth. Couldn't agree with that more. They are pulling us away from the truth, And he said it all right there, and that is a fact. He goes on to say this will be a large, potentially nationwide task if you're a lawyer who believes in the rule of law, the presumption of innocence, and our very commitment to the truth, and want to do something about it. Please reach out to me privately. And that from Russell Latino. And I'll tell you what, if you listen to this, Russell, I'd love to sit down and do a podcast with you and talk about some of the things going on in this case if you'd be interested. And moving on from that, and look, I don't know what it is about these keyboard warriors, y'all, that think they can just say whatever the fuck they want and there are no repercussions. Y'all gonna learn that a lot of people here in the Deep South do not play. And you start with the bullshit and you're gonna get it right back. And these boys are anteing up. And moving on, the Crump camp has also sent out some subpoenas under the past week. And I'm going to reference the Sun Herald for this one. And it reads, new subpoenas have been issued to various social media companies and location tracking apps in connection with its pending litigation related to the death of Nolan Wells. On Tuesday, Mississippi-based attorney Gary Bufkin filed subpoenas to obtain information from accounts associated with the 18-year-old student athlete on Snapchat, WhatsApp, TikTok, Meta, and the location tracking app Life360. Bufkin, a Ridgeland-based attorney from the law firm Carol Bufkin, is assisting prominent civil rights attorney Ben Crump in the independent investigation into the death of Wells after he failed to return home from a 4th of July trip to Horn Island with friends. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department is heading up the investigation into Wells' death with assistance from the FBI. The FBI is also assisting in the investigation into alleged threats made against the Wansleys, law enforcement, and friends and family of those associated with Wells the day he went missing. Wells' mother is the administrator of her son's estate. She and her husband, Elmore Wansley, hired Crump in the aftermath of their son's death, and Christine Wansley said she and her husband simply want to know what happened to their son. Now, I want to address, first of all, I want to say on this, that's normal. So we'll see on that, but I did see that coming. I also want to say this. Threats, any direction, are bullshit and should not occur. And they do nothing but slow this investigation down. The people making the threats don't care about this investigation, y'all. They don't care about getting to the truth. They care about division. Plain and simple. So the people on what they would call the Nolan Wells side of things, which I think Nolan Wells side of things is getting to the truth. So we're all on the Nolan Wells side of things. Let's get to that right now. But honestly, the people on one side of this case, they should be as pissed off as everybody else that these things are occurring with all these threats and information like that. It shouldn't happen on either side of the totem pole. Now, another individual close to this case is Dr. Ben Hudson, who is the father of Warren Hudson. So his mother is a judge, or a stepmother, and his father is a doctor, and he's had enough of all this, Dr. Ben Hudson. And in an article published by the New York Post, he slammed Ben Crump for his belief that this tragic death is being pretty much turned into a political circus. And I'll cover that with you. It says the dad of Nolan Wells' friend has slammed the attorney representing the teen's family for allegedly using the tragedy for political and financial gain. Wells, 18, went missing during a 4th of July boat trip. We know all that. Question from Wells' parents, Christine and Elmore Wansley, and online amateur sleuths have dogged the promising college football player's pals about why they left him behind on that fateful day. Now, the dad of Warren Hudson, a 19-year-old who previously told, and incidentally, this is the New York Post, previously told the Post he considered Wells his best friend and was with him on the island the day he went missing, is speaking out in an exclusive interview with the Post, which was an interview he did prior to the podcast interview. Quote, in my opinion, truth is not Ben Crump's concern. He's exploiting the situation and raising money. Ben Hudson, 56, a medical physician and father of 6, said of the famed civil rights attorney representing the Wells family, quote, "I think this is financially exploiting the entire tragedy and making it much bigger at the expense of my family and our community." Hudson revealed that his family intends to sue Crump for defamation and slander over comments that have been made since Wells' death. Quote, "In my opinion, Ben Crump has slandered and falsely accused my son and his friends of murder, and he's pursued what is obviously a false narrative. I think he can expect lawsuits, not just from my family, but a number of other families who, in my opinion, he has defamed." Hudson also blasted the Reverend Al Sharpton, whose National Action Network is standing with the Wells family as they carry out a private investigation into the teen's death. Sharpton's involvement is 100% correlated with the fact that we have a midterm election coming up, Ben Hudson said. "My family, the Wells-Wansley family, and the family of all these kids are being used by people like Al Sharpton and Ben Crump and news outlets as political pawns to win some kind of political favor in the midterms." Thousands of credible death threats and hate messages have been sent to the Hudson family, he claimed, including what he said was a picture of the mother of his wife, Jackson County Court Judge Ashley Cole, with the comment saying, quote, "I hope you all die." Holy smokes, man. This is a woman that had nothing to do with this. This is the mother of Judge Ashley Cole. And of course, since this article, it came out someone was arrested for threatening to send her a bomb in the mail. And you know, as I'm researching this stuff, just as I thought, okay, that's about 8 different things I've had to debunk today, something else comes out. And we're going to address it. And that is a statement by Mississippi Department of Safety, Sean Tyndall. He had to release this, and it says, quote, "The purported toxicology report from Nolan Wells circulating through social media on various outlets is fraudulent. Nolan's family, friends, and most importantly, Nolan himself deserves better. Fraudsters, AI, and social media are a recipe for disaster. All they want you to do is click and share. Don't." So essentially what came out, y'all, was somebody puts out there, AI generated, and it was very well done. It looked like a real toxicology report. AI generated, totally saying all this nefarious information on Nolan Wells, which is totally shitting on this guy's memory. It is fake. It is not true. Those results have not been released yet. They will be coming in short order, but that should piss everybody off. Again, now I'm going to go back to the father of Warren Hudson, and that was Dr. Ben Hudson. He also came out around this time, July 30th, and he said, you know what? We want to see this thing get solved just like everybody else. We want to know what happened to Nolan Wells. And so we're going to ante up $50,000 ourselves for information leading to whatever has happened to Nolan Wells. This was an article by TMZ, and it goes on to say, as days pass, the hunt for the truth about what happened to Nolan Wells intensifies, from social media users around the world calling for justice. Celebrities like Tyler Perry, Colin Kaepernick, investing money into helping the family find out what happened to their 18-year-old son. In fact, Dr. Ben Hudson, the father of one of Wells' reported friends, announced a $50,000 reward for anyone who can provide details about what happened to Wells. Quote, "We feel people aren't talking because of the pressure of the case," Dr. Hudson said. "We don't know that anyone had any involvement, but we care about Nolan and we want to know what happened." Warren's father also told the outlet that his family has received thousands of death threats, and have covered all of that. So you would think people would come out at this point, hey, that's $50,000 more going towards, enticing someone. If something happened, if they saw something and they're scared to come out, enticing them to come out and say something about that to police at least. But no, you know what people do? They get on Twitter and they say things like, wait, now Warren's father is offering a $50,000 reward for the arrest in the Nolan Wells case? Yeah, it's a cover-up. What the hell? It's a cover-up. He's offering $50,000 for information. How is that a cover-up? I'm trying to cover up by giving even more money? Okay. Someone else said, anyone find it weird the timing of this reward from Warren's family comes out after the CTO call was made available to the public? Not a month ago when his best friend was reported missing, but now. Well, I would say to this person, you're not going to just ante up $50,000 when you're assuming the investigation is going to be complete in a day's time. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. Then another person says they've officially turned on each other now that Warren's dad is offering a $50,000 reward because for what? Y'all know from the jump, the circle has collapsed. Justice for Nolan. Dumb. You can't even respond to that, y'all. It makes absolutely no sense to me. How is it possible that you can offer $50,000 for information on what happened to Nolan Wells and be criticized for it? How is that even possible? But you know what? We live in a weird ass world these days, y'all. I started this podcast with the words facts matter, y'all. And I think that we're at the point where everyone needs to ask themselves, what side are you on? And I'm not talking about black or white, because this case, the fact that anyone would attempt to make this a race thing, to me, is laughable. It's really a large group of many different races, from Mexican to black to white, being a bunch of racist kids all of a sudden. Come on, y'all. What I'm talking about here is, are you on the side of the truth? Which to me means you're on the side of Nolan Wells. Or are you on the side of pushing a narrative that does not exist to create division and a mockery of this young man who to me appeared to be a pretty awesome young man? Why are you making a mockery of his death? Ask yourself that. Why are you making fake AI images if everything you believe is true? Ask yourself that. Well, this just in, okay, they have a website called Give, Send, Go. Essentially, from what I understand, this is similar to GoFundMe, kind of the same thing. Well, the friends of Nolan Wells, the attorneys for those friends, they have set up a Give, Send, Go. And I'm going to read you this quickly. It says, on Independence Day weekend 2026, lives were changed forever when a group of friends lost their best friend, Nolan Wells. No family should have to endure the pain of losing a son, and no friend should have to grieve the loss of a brother. But instead of being allowed to mourn, what followed was an unprecedented online campaign of accusation, harassment, threat, and defamation. Since Nolan's death, Warren Hudson, Jax Patalo, Morgan Seymour, and many others have been inundated with death threats, threats of violence, and defamation. They have been falsely and wrongly blamed by individuals online and the media of either directly or indirectly having a hand in Nolan's death. Most of them could not even attend their own best friend's funeral. Why? Because race baiters sent a deranged army after them online in the name of justice. Since the beginning of this investigation, these young men have all cooperated with authorities, turned over all the information they had, and provided an overwhelming number of witness accounting for the whereabouts. Some of them even resorted to speaking up publicly to defend themselves against baseless allegations. But unfortunately, it became clear the truth doesn't matter. Countless large voices across social media declared them guilty of crimes they could not have committed and have never been charged with. Their name, faces, and personal information were spread across the internet. They and their families have received thousands of hateful messages, death threats, and calls of violence. They have been threatened online and in person countless times. They have been bomb threats, packages sent, and credible threats of which arrests have been made. Parents have feared for their children's safety. Lives have been turned upside down, and some have had to go into hiding. Al Sharpton, Ben Crump, and the usual suspects of social media, national news media, and local provocateurs continue to invent and spread false narratives and lies with no accountability. This is the typical tactic of Ben Crump and the like. They come to communities like the Gulf Coast under the guise of seeking justice, but it has become painfully clear their version of justice is stirring division, ruining lives, and then leaving when money dries up. And so at this point, they post a fundraiser, and get this, this has only been up one day as of this recording. The goal for this was $100,000 to help in the defense of these friends. You know what it's up to already in one day? $87,985. And it's going to well surpass that goal, obviously. But these people are fighting back. These kids are not going to take this sitting down any longer. So y'all keep up with the lies and the bullshit and accusing these kids and making these AI images, which are all traceable, and watch how quick you get sued. Look, prayers to Nolan's family. And I want to say this before I get out of here, because people know I'm a fan of the Officer Tatum's podcast, always have been, think he does great work, but we don't agree on everything. Officer Tatum, I think, has been a little hard on the family of Nolan Wells. That's my opinion on it. I do not think that they have any nefarious intent, and I'm not going to allude to the fact that they may have some nefarious intent. I believe that there were a lot of situations where they got taken advantage of in the beginning because they're grieving. I think they're a good family, and I do think they're trying to get to the answers of this case, so I don't agree. Officer Tatum still needs some things answered in his mind for it to make sense to him. But to me, I think that this is just a grieving family, that there's some bottom feeders out there. There's bottom feeders out there in this world. They exist. And I think some are trying to just basically take advantage of a grieving family. That's my opinion. I have no direct knowledge. But I do want to say prayers to Nolan's family and every other family that is affected by what is, in my view, becomes something it was never intended to be. So let's all pray for justice to prevail. But one thing I can promise you before I get out of here today is I'm going to keep you updated, and I'm going to bring you the facts of this case, the days of the bad actors controlling the narrative as it relates to Nolan Wells in this case are over. Everybody is pushing back now. There's going to be a lot of lawsuits start rolling out of the gate, not only against people very close to this case, but also these dumb ass social media creators and TikTok creators and the like that are lying flat out about this case. Y'all are about to get hammered. Y'all are about to get hammered. You remember, y'all, in the Brian Kohberger case, when they had a TikTok, there was one in particular, I don't remember her name, but she was accusing somebody that was a professor with these girls, some of these girls that had gotten killed. And all these TikTokers came out and said, oh, she did it. She did. They're saying definitively, this person did it or he did it. Well, guess what? Obviously they didn't do it. Brian Kohberger did it. That person got sued for millions. You can't just say somebody did something without evidence. So be careful with that. You can't just threaten people because you think it's funny. So be careful about that. That can get you in a lot more than just legal trouble. Until next time, thank you so much for listening. Check out the Patreon, commercial-free early releases, bonus episodes, even quarterly gifts, patreon.com/exposed podcast files. And until next time, for Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite, I am your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.